Hello, welcome. So today we are going to talk about books that I read in September and October if I feel like I have something to say about them. So the first book that I finished that I want to talk about is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This is a Kindle exclusive book, or not Kindle exclusive, but Amazon exclusive, so you can read it on Kindle Unlimited, Kindle purchase, or you can buy the physical book from Amazon, but that is the only way you can access this book. So I did a Kindle Unlimited free trial because I always wanted to read this book, and it was really, really good. So this is very sort of blatantly an Avatar: The Last Airbender inspired-esque story. So we are following a woman who is like a mom. She has like 4 kids or something like that. These people can manipulate water, the specific people that we are talking about. But then there are also like rival kingdoms, etc. that can manipulate air, fire, etc. Obviously, you see the Avatar connection. But the thing that I really liked about this book was that it was essentially like an alternative story of like a female fantasy heroine who was like a fighter as a child, like not child, but like a teenager, like wanted to grow up and be a warrior, and like her family was like, no, you need to get married and have kids and like be a normal person. And, you know, normally you'd have like a YA book where the heroine is like, no, screw you guys, I'm running away and I'm living my dreams or whatever. But this character did not. She did what her family wanted her to do. Like, she had too much respect for her father and her family to reject what they wanted for her. So you're seeing, you know, the outcome of someone giving that up and then potentially having to pick that back up when kind of her community is in danger. And yeah, it was a really good story. I really, really enjoyed it. I did think that the build up kind of took a while. Like I was starting to get a little bit like, okay, let's move along, because it is a little bit of a long book, like not crazy long, but yeah. But I greatly enjoyed the whole experience of reading it, and definitely, like, we're gonna see this again, but I don't feel like she has like the most amazing author craft. Like, she doesn't write badly. Like, the writing does not distract from the story, which is really the only thing that I require from an author. But there are things that, yeah, I just think that the like artistry or the craftsmanship of the story could be better. And this one was self-published, so she did not have any, you know, presumably support from, maybe she hired an editor, but other than that, it was, you know, all her. So I totally understand that. And again, I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that the writing is like bad or anything. It's just that I wouldn't go into it expecting like beautiful writing. It's wonderful storytelling and wonderful world creation, more so than wonderful writing. I think she has some YA books, but her other adult book that is out, we'll just jump to that one now. Blood Over Bright Haven. I loved this book. I think, like this one better than The Sword of Kaigen, although they're just so different, it's hard to compare them. But, so Blood Over Bright Haven is like a, kind of like a dark academia fantasy story. So we are following a young mage, I think is what they're called. She's basically going in to be like a postdoctorate mage or whatever. So like no female mage has ever advanced to this level. They normally don't let them even test to achieve this, and if they do let them test, they always fail, and so they always have to go into like education or whatever. So she is the first one to be able to test for this in the past like 10 years even. So she wants to be, I think it's a high mage. I think she wants to be a high mage. And so the magic in this world is very well developed in the story. It reminds me a lot of computer programming, actually, the way that she talked about it. I think that was intentional. So anyway, there's all kinds of things that happen, but she meets this person who is from like the outside of this community. So there's like a walled community that they all live inside of, and they are safe from anything that's outside the community. But she meets someone who was like a refugee from outside of this and starts to kind of deconstruct her community and all kinds of things. And this was so good. Like, I read the majority of it in like 2 days. It is very heavy-handed. Like, if you were someone who read Babel and thought that it was too heavy-handed, like, you would hate this. Very similar themes. Definitely recommend. Bunny. I finally read Bunny by Mona Awad. So I read Rouge first by her, actually, and then I read this one, and then I actually read All's Well this month in November, so that will be, in future. But I have very kind of similar feelings about all three of them so far, so I do want to read the only other novel that she has out, which I think is 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl or something like that, and then I will have read all of her novels. So far, my common thread for all three is that they are about 100 pages longer than they need to be. I loved all three of them. I think that they are all great books, but I think they would be stronger as novellas than as full-blown novels, because they just kind of meander in the middle. Like, she has such strong concepts, and she's also a really good writer. But they're concepts that would be really, really well executed as like a really striking, like 200-page book. Even potentially like a collection of like all three novellas that I've read so far by her would be amazing. Like, make them like 150 pages, just like sharp as could be. I would love it. So anyway, Bunny is the story of a young woman in a master's, like an MFA program at this like prestigious liberal arts college. All of the other girls in her cohort are in this like clique where they call each other Bunny. Like, they are obsessed with each other, they do everything together, and they are like, oh, Bunny, how was your weekend, Bunny? And and she really doesn't fit in with the group, but eventually they ask her to come to their secret society group thing, which isn't a secret at all, but she's never been to it. She kind of discovers that they have secrets and blah, 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 and a whole bunch of very, very bizarre things happen. There are a lot of really weird and disturbing things that happen in this book. Overall, I wouldn't say that most of the book reads as horror at all, but there are definitely horrific scenes, 100%. I found this book so fascinating and so fun to read. I read it when I was sick. Like, I had a pretty bad cold, and I read like 75% of this in like one day, and I would read for like an hour, take a nap, read for another hour, and like it was just perfectly suited to that like semi-delirious state when you're kind of sick. A very interesting book. I wouldn't say it was like the most thought-provoking long-term. Like, I think her themes were more well developed in All's Well and Rouge than in this one, but this one was more compelling to read. Like, the plot was stronger in this one, so I did really enjoy this one. This one was the one that I enjoyed the most to read, I think. Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. So this is a short, like a novella. I don't know what is considered a novella, but this was like 200 pages. I think I saw this on Sid Bookworm's channel, pretty sure. So this is the story of a young woman who is a professor at a university in the South, and she meets this other young woman at a market, and she's just completely taken with her. There's this possibility that I've never entertained before, and so they, strike up kind of a friendship, maybe a something, and so there's all this back and forth of this getting to know this woman who is very, I don't know, it's hard to say, very traditional in one sense and very non-traditional in another sense. So she's she makes everything by hand, doesn't engage in any normal societal things like cell phones or TV or anything, but also, super non-traditional in other ways. And there are, potential red flags in their relationship, but, things develop. So yeah, super, super interesting book. I think the pacing was atrocious. You read for forever before, the things that you are obviously know while you're reading it are going to start happening. Speaking of heavy-handed, I don't want to say it was heavy-handed, because I think that's exactly what she wanted to do. And I think that what she wanted to do, she was successful at, but I do wonder if a more nuanced approach could have been slightly more impactful, but I don't know. It was an enjoyable read. I wasn't obsessed with it, but it was interesting. Listen for the Lie was a mystery thriller-ish book that I listened to, and I did listen to this very rapidly. So it was super engaging, super entertaining. It was the perfect thing when you're kind of in a slump. Part of the format of the book is a podcast, so listening to the audiobook is perfect because you get, the natural sounding podcast bits. So the premise of this is that your main character, she's from this town in Texas, I think, and her best friend was murdered when they were in their early 20s, I think, and she was always kind of implicated in the murder because she was found with a head injury covered in blood after her friend was killed, but she doesn't remember anything, and they never found any solid evidence one way or another. So it wasn't she was found guilty of this or anything, but the whole town pretty much thinks that she did this. So she moved to LA, moved on with her life, etc., etc. But the whole thing kind of comes back up when someone starts a podcast covering the case. And so she, loses her job because there's this podcast essentially accusing her of being a murderer and all this kind of stuff. So she moves back to her hometown and starts engaging with the case again to try to discover the truth, etc., etc. So this was absolutely ridiculous. So many things happened in this that were okay. But it was entertaining enough. It was fine. I think it did have some really good themes. And so yeah, it was absolutely not a red letter thriller for me, but it also, if the author came out with another thriller, I would consider reading it. So there is that. Okay, Carcoma by Layla Martinez. The title in English is Woodworm. This one, super, super interesting book. I would need to reread this to fully, I think, appreciate it. It's kind of a horror, but not super horrific, just a super dark toned book. So you're following this woman and her grandmother who live in Cuenca, Spain, I think. They are completely impoverished and they are outcasts in their community. Everyone believes that the grandmother has abilities to speak to spirits, and their house is severely haunted. They are basically cursed to continue to live in this house that is full of dark spirits because the grandfather or somebody in their family did a bunch of bad things, and they are basically living out the generational curses. And so there's all kinds of themes of sexism, classism, all kinds of interesting undercurrents here. But again, this was only like 150 pages maybe, but I would need to reread it because it was kind of difficult to read in Spanish, and I took a big break in the middle of it, and I think I would just need to read it all in one go and, reabsorb some of it. But super interesting. I don't think it would be like a favorite for me, but very, very interesting themes. Then I read 2 arcs. One of them is out now, called She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. This is the author of Boy Parts and Penance. I have not read Penance yet, but I really want to. I liked Boy Parts a lot, but didn't love it. I just didn't ultimately feel like it was something that was going to stick with me when I read it, and I think that's true. Like, I definitely remember it with like, whoa, that was an intense book. But yeah, the themes just didn't, like, for me personally, have a huge impact. But this one I really, really liked. So this is a short story collection, and they are in very, very diverse genres. So there's sci-fi stories in there. There's kind of like almost folklore kind of stories. There's one that's just like a funny thing where you're just reading Google reviews for this fictional restaurant, and they were just wild and hilarious. But I really, really liked this collection. Like, I would totally reread this, especially as an audiobook, like re-listen to these. I think it was really good. If you like kind of weird stories, these weren't like the weirdest. They weren't like Cursed Bunny level weird. It was a very enjoyable read to me. Obviously, always with short stories, some are gonna stick with you more than others, but I liked it. Then we have When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi. So I read Starter Villain by him this summer. Loved it. Like, was obsessed with that book while I was reading it. I thought it was hilarious. I don't think I've laughed out loud that many times while reading a book, maybe ever. And so when I saw this one on NetGalley, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'll read that. So this is about the moon turning to cheese, literally. Like, the actual moon becomes cheese, and they have to figure out how to deal with that. So it was fine. Like, he is really, really talented. Like, he's so funny, and he tells a really good story. So while I actually did not like this book that much, every time I thought that I was like checked out, he would have some like really endearing perspective or really funny moment that like brought me right back to the story, and like was like, okay, I'm like checked in again, you know? So I rated this 3 stars. I don't usually rate books that much, but I do for arcs because it's obviously important. So by the way, I rated She's Always Hungry 4.5, and I rated this 3. It's not that I don't think people should read it. If the premise is attractive to you, it's a perfectly good way to pass time reading, but there was not actually really anything super compelling to me about this book. You know, you're following how this event of the moon turning to cheese impacts a whole bunch of different people. So there's like a bunch of different perspectives, and a lot of them do tie in together. There were perspectives that were really endearing. There were perspectives that were hilarious. There were some that were really boring to me. So yeah, I mean, it was really entertaining. There were endearing moments. So, you know, it's a meh from me. So that is where I'm at for September and October. I am hoping to be back making videos regularly again. I do think I'm going to continue only wrapping up books that I actually feel like I have something I want to say, that I felt like I was spending too much time talking about books that I really didn't have strong feelings about at all. I felt like I was talking about books that I just didn't care about too much. And so, yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave them out. But if you want to know everything that I'm reading in great detail, you can follow me on Storygraph, Joe Renee Reads, and on there I do log all of the books that I read, but I don't normally review them on there. So I am excited to be back. If you missed it, I moved to Spain, so there's lots of new things going on in my life. But I am reading quite a bit because I'm by myself, so, But yeah, let me know how things have been going for you, and I will see you in the next video.